everyone. As I noted earlier, tonight we'll be talking with Jalisa Whitley of Book Trips. We'll also stick around for part two, where I'll be giving you a novice introduction into graphic novels, what I've learned so far by a bit of my research, as well as my first attempt at a review of a graphic novel. We'll be looking at Tim Fielder's Infinitum. It's an Afrofuturistic tale. As you know, I have an affinity for science fiction, especially Black science and speculative fiction. So there's no wonder that my first review in the graphic novel world would be in that genre. We'll also be taking a look at last week's books hauls. We were able to meet some really wonderful people at Benny's Book Extravaganza, hosted by the Bel Air Addison Neighborhood Incorporated organization. We also stopped by one of our favorites, Snug Books, as well as we stopped by a new bookish store that I want to talk to you tonight about, and that's the House Handcrafted. It's a women-owned small business, actually right located in the historic Hamilton Laurelville neighborhood, right behind Snug Books. So we'll get into some of the book hauls. First, a shout out to some of the Books and Bounty sponsors. I want to give a special shout out to my longtime friend and mentor, Donnie Glover, over at BeMoreNews.com, home of the Emmy-nominated Donnie Glover Show. You can catch Donnie every morning, weekdays, 9 a.m. I also want to give a special shout out to Dr. LJ Speaks of JNF Enterprises, where he is an impact builder. He can help you build your businesses as well as consult and coach you into the next level and phase where you want to go. So shout out to Dr. LJ Speaks, JNF Enterprises. He has been working with me on a couple of upcoming bookish enterprises and events, and I can't wait to share those details with you. Also, a reminder, follow us on Twitch and join the Bookish Brigade on Discord. If you are a follower on Twitch and you are also part of the Brigade Discord, then you are automatically entered for any of the Books and Bounty giveaways. We just had our first giveaway announcement last week, last Tuesday. Shout out to D Drizzle 18. He has been a Books and Bounty supporter since day one. Actually, looking back to his history after we pulled his name out of the Beyonce boot, that was fun. So go check that out and some highlights from last week's episode. But he's now Jalisa, the winner of the complete series of the Legend of Orisha series by Tomi Adeyemi.
Very cool.
Yes, and shout out to Tommy because she just announced on social media, I think it was yesterday or today, that they are now finally casting for the Children of Blood and Bone movie, which was picked up by Paramount Films. So check out her social media if you're interested in um, submitting a headshot and monologue, and you can follow the submission guides that she has provided on her pages. So I want to get this right, so I'm going to read from my paper. Whenever I introduce a special guest, I want to make sure I get it right. So I'm going to read what I wrote here verbatim. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit of shop, bookish business entrepreneur with Jalisa Whitley. And with a wanderlust for the world of words, Jalisa started Book Trips. Book Trips connects curious and community-minded women through storytelling. Their book-inspired travel experiences and immersive itineraries take travelers from the page to the place, exploring cities around the world. With only 12 spots available per trip, travelers are able to take excursions off the beaten track and enjoy some of the more intimate people and culture focused gems that their destination has to offer. Tonight, we'll talk about Jalisa's growing business, her travels, and what's up next for Book Trips. So, again, thank you, Jalisa. Welcome to Books and Bounty TV.
Yay. So
It's so
happy to be here.
is a week that actually we were sitting next to each other at the Baltimore Book Festival. Am I right?
Yes.
And we sparked up a conversation. She used to let me know what she did with Book Trips, and I immediately was infatuated with the idea, and said, you know what, you are one of the, our bookish person that I really want to know more about. I'm sure the Books and Vanity following would want to know more about you. There are a lot of bookish entrepreneurs on TikTok that follow Books and Bounty and that I interact with there. I hope you guys are all joining tonight to get some tips and tricks from Jalisa. So let's jump right into it, Jalisa. First, we have up on the screen. I don't know if you can see it, but we have your logo up on the screen, and I love a good, like, simple yet communicative logo. It tells you everything you need to know about the business, and you've done it so exquisitely. How did you come up with that logo?
Yeah, so I actually did not personally come up with the logo. I used someone from Fiverr, so highly recommend Fiverr for the entrepreneurs. I told them a little bit about the book and some ideas for what I wanted. I wanted it to express that it was book centric and to have a forward moving, travel focused kind of look to it. And they nailed it immediately. And for the colors, orange feels like vibrant and energetic and connective. And those are kind of the energy that I wanted the trips to have. So that's how the logo came about.
Yeah, it's awesome. I can see it animated.
Thank
I can
you.
see, I mean, it's the stacked books. It's also a bee. You have the airplane. I mean, it's everything. They did a wonderful job. So kudos to Fiverr and for all of the again bookish entrepreneurs. Write these things, these tips down. So, as always get started with our guests, I want to know where their passion for reading started. And with you, it's the sort of chicken or the egg story. Was it a passion for travel that started your love of reading, or did the reading come first and introduce you to the world of traveling?
Yeah, so it was definitely the latter. I grew up in upstate New York, in Geneva, New York, a very small town in a very religious family. And so we would be in church 4 times a week, and our church was across the street from the public library. And the way I could get out of Monday night prayer at church was to go to the library. So every week I would go to the library and get my 20 books a week because that was the max you could take out.
No.
And it just exploded my mind to worlds that were so much bigger than my small town. And that was really my entry point to traveling through books. So books were my first passport. With the Harry Potter series and Madeline, I traveled through Europe. And so that was really the entry point for me. I'm a library girl still to this day. And so it was definitely books first. It wasn't until undergrad that I started to travel. So in undergrad, I studied abroad in Hungary and Romania. I
Mm.
studied race and ethnic relations, specifically focused on the migration of the Roma population. And so that started to connect this intellectual curiosity in the world of travel. And for me, what the commonality is this focus on storytelling. And so through books, you're transported to the author's story. And then when you travel, as you're meeting people and having experiences, you really understand the culture and the context of a place through the stories of the people that you meet. So that's really what I wanted to create through book trips.
Just sorry, I'm just adjusting your video there, making it a little bit larger for folks. So you talked about your study abroad in college. That's actually the first time I was able to study abroad internationally was in college as well. It happened to be in Ghana. We'll talk a little bit more about that when
Mm.
we talk about your latest trip. But first, I want to know about the first trip that you actually planned, whether it was for book trips or just for a friend. I'm actually the friend that falls into the trip planner category. So, what was the first trip where you thought that, oh, I have a knack for this? I actually find it's actually kind of fun. Like, when did you plan your first full fledged trip with other people?
Yes. So my first trip for book trips was to Mexico City. So we read like Water for Chocolate
Yeah.
by Laura Escobar.
Yes.
And we went to Mexico City for Day of the Dead. And so this is when I just first had the burgeoning idea of book trips. So there had been women that I had been in book clubs with or that I had volunteered with who I thought would be interested in the experience. So I just emailed this group of 10 women and said, I have this idea, would you be willing to take the leap with me? It's going to be a book inspired experience. Here's what we're reading. Every day of the trip will be inspired by the book. And everyone said yes. And so we went to Mexico City, and Mexico City is a foodie city all the way. So like Water for Chocolate was a perfect fit because it's a book
Mhm.
of recipes. Every chapter is a recipe in the book. And so that was really the kernel of the idea. And it really started to create some of the anchor points that later became elements of book trips. So we started with an opening dinner and book discussion, which has become a staple of every trip where folks come together for like a book inspired talk, kind of like a book club meeting where we talk about the elements of the book, what people liked, what they didn't like, the characters that they related with, over a meal that really is representative of the place that we're visiting. So it's a taste of the city as well as a taste of the book, and it gives you a little entree into what each day of the trip will be. And from there, each day was a quote from the book, whether the history of the place, um, meeting with local entrepreneurs. My favorite part of that trip was working with Tabula Rasa, which is the table or the meeting place. And it's this couple who host dinners in their home that really showcase the food that they grew up with and really uses meals as a way to create community and conversation. And so it was just a really wonderful trip, and I learned a whole lot about what I would create from there.
So, how many trips have you had so far with book trips?
So we've sold out 10 trips and hosted eight. And so our first two trips of next year are sold out, but we've hosted eight so far, and we started in October 2022.
Look at you, that is so exciting. So,
Thank
we
you.
heard about some of your signature elements, some of the things that you kept throughout the trips, the opening dinner, the quotes to inspire the day, as well as the conversation, to have it centered back on the book. What are some of the things that you've learned, or some of the things that if folks are planning a big excursion, especially with a big group of friends, what are the things that you've learned that you would want to give tips out there to people?
Definitely. As far as what I learned, I would never take a group to a place that I haven't personally been.
That was
I
going to be
think
my
it's
next
very
question.
important.
Mhm.
Yes, definitely. I think it's important to, especially as a company that caters to solo women travelers. It's important to know what it feels like, especially to be a Black woman in that space. So knowing things that other travel companies might not be looking for in terms of safety, security, a feeling of welcome. So really going and understanding that, knowing
Mhm.
how to navigate the airport, what to look out for, what to pack. Um, all of those things, I think you have to be on the ground to really know that. And it's my chance to meet with local partners. So for me, it's really important for me to partner with locally owned companies, particularly Black and Brown owned companies, so
Mhm.
that our tourism dollars are having an impact in the local community and our tourism dollars are staying in the local community. So I'm meeting one on one to adapt our personalized experiences. I'm checking out the hotels to make sure they're up to the standards and quality, checking out the restaurants. We build guides for each of our cities, so making sure in people's free time, they know what the locals are doing. They don't have to do the research of finding these hidden gems of where to go.
Agree.
So I
Mhm.
would definitely recommend visiting the place before you bring people, making sure your transportation is on lock, especially if you're going around big holiday seasons. A lot of these transportation providers get booked out months in advance in major cities. So making sure you're building those relationships before you get on the ground, having a payment collection system that makes it very easy for folks to track payments, to be on payment plans, to clearly see what's happening. We use We Travel, which is amazing. You're
Mhm.
able to show your itinerary where people can download it or use an app or see it online and make all your payments on We Travel. So I think that has been a great learning lesson. Just having a system that people can feel like is safe
Yeah.
and secure. They can pay by bank, they can pay by credit card. That's been really helpful. Um, Other learnings, creating downtime. So this has been the hardest thing for me because I'm the traveler that likes to go, go, go.
Let's
But
go.
knowing that
We
some
sleep when we go
people,
home. Yes.
yes, that is me, but some people, want to rest and relax, and I understand it because they work really hard.
Mhm.
So really building in balance for both types of people has been a really big learning lesson and making things optional. So, in the moment you might feel like I want to stay back at the hotel or I might want to explore this bookstore that I heard about. So just making things really flexible for folks has definitely also been a lesson.
Like that, because I'm also the type of friend, especially when I'm planning group trips or I'm attending a group trip, like everybody doesn't have to do everything together, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
It's especially when you have like more than, less than, if you have more than a few travelers with you, everyone, you won't be able to satisfy everyone's taste. Some people may tire out. Some people's social battery may be have more capacity than others. Um, and one of my best friends, whose name actually has to be Stephanie, is the sort of the latter. She would like to go rest.
Yes.
And maybe a few excursions. So that is something that I've learned, that especially as you get older, you have to be comfortable with the whole group is may not do every single thing together, and that's fine. You have to plan. The group can do two a option A and option B. So I really, really, really like that. Um, so I feel like you're experiencing or about to experience a rapid moment of growth and scale with book trips. How are
Mhm.
you preparing yourself for that momentum and balancing all of your other responsibilities?
Yeah, so I am right in the middle of that. And so this is a very timely question. I'm finishing up Business Accelerator. I got into the Goldman Sachs Business Accelerator for Black women businesses.
Woo,
Thank
wait a minute.
you.
Wait a minute. Don't. Let's not rest past that. Goldman Sachs Business Accelerator. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So it's been really helpful as I prepare for scale because it gives me
Mhm.
really the business acumen to make decisions based on profit, customer retention, and just being more mindful of those type of things and how to prepare for hiring and scale. And so that has been the perfect kind of infrastructure building for standard operating procedures, hiring, all of those communications, those kind of things. So that has been great on the like technical business side to prepare for it. As far as the preparing for the rest of my life, that's where it gets a little bit harder because I do think there are trade-offs. Um, I I don't think you can have it all at the same time. So it's also deciding what are my values, what are my priorities, and how am I clear that there are some things I get to say an excited yes to, and then there are some things that means I have to say no to now. And so getting really clear on over the next couple years, what things do I get to say yes to as I scale, and then what things are trade offs as I'm building the business. So I think I'm in the middle of really reckoning with that because for me, community, friendship, showing up well in my relationships is very important to me, and so those things are non-negotiable, which means that I have to make some other decisions in my business to be able to center some of those things, including hiring and delegation and all of those things. So yeah, I think that it's top of mind how I'm preparing for that.
Well, I am wishing you much success. I feel it. The question came out organically because seeing that the upcoming trips sold out fairly quickly. We were talking
Mm.
about it, and the next thing I know, I'm looking on your page. I'm like, oh, there's a sold out stamp over top of these. So I feel something in the air for you, Jaleesa, and I'm wishing you much growth. And
Thank you.
and that you're and everything else is able to keep up with it. So, um, but let's get into this latest trip before we start talking about what's upcoming next. Homegoing Yagyasi, this is your second time offering this travel experience to Ghana. Um,
The first time
it's first time.
we're offering a next one next October.
Next October. Okay, so this is the first one, and then we're offering it again because there's a lot of excitement around this trip. I know this is experience that I would want to definitely do again, especially as an adult. When I went in my early 20s as a young college student, much different perspective. I was more interested in the clubs and
Yes.
be now. So I'll have to keep posted on the trip. So tell us about homegoing and how you decided to pick this particular book, because as you can see my book, the pages are slightly yellowed, a little tattered. I read this when it first came out. I have to admit I had to go back through a little bit of my SparkNote summaries to refresh my memory for this conversation. Um, but a lot of it reminded me of the idea of Sankofa,
Mm.
and that you have to look back at your past in order to gain your future. And the state of especially Black Americans, and we they go through the generational traumas of post-colonial Africa as well in this book, how the characters and families reconcile or do not with the idea of what is my history, what is my lineage, how do I shred the curses and trauma, and also gain the strength and the knowledge from the past, right? If I don't have that direct connection any longer. There's many themes, but tell me how you picked homegoing and what from the book did you bring out into your trip to Ghana?
Yeah, so for homegoing, for me, this was, especially when the first time I read it, it was just one of those books that it felt like a siren song. Like it became everyone's favorite book when it came out.
Yep.
So it talks about two sisters, Afia and Essie, and they're half sisters that get separated. One lineage stays in Ghana, one lineage it follows them through America over generations. And to your point, it really gets to this story about legacy, lineage, and how do you heal the trauma of the effects of slavery and colonialism. And for me, when I'm looking for book trips stories, it's what is a story where the place is palpable. And I feel like in Homegoing, you could feel Ghana, you could feel Elmina Castle, you could feel Cape Coast. You had a very strong sense of Ghana as a place.
Hmm.
It's a great conversation book when you talk about motherhood
Yes.
and what do we pass on to
Yes.
our lineage, what traumas do we hold, what traumas do we shed. So I think the conversation piece was very important to me. And then I think there was the year of the return in 2019, and there's a lot of interest about moving abroad, a lot of people moving to Ghana. So there was this conversation about what does it mean to return home when home is not a place that you've been, or you may not know distinctly your ancestry. So I think this was a great entry point into that. Um, I think those elements got brought into the book. So we had a naming ceremony where folks got their Ghanaian names, and with the village elders were able to be welcomed home. And to do that naming ceremony was a really powerful experience for
Mhm.
folks.
That's
Getting to
right.
go to Cape Coast Castle, um, and feeling the scenes in that book, that was a very emotional experience for folks. So I think bringing those elements in, but then also the elements of this, our lineage is not only trauma, is not only separation. So we went to the Inshinshin Museum, which is a beautiful public art display that tells our history that starts before colonization, that starts before slavery. It talks about what are the griots, what are the stories that
Mhm.
really ground the experience of Ghanaians. So I think that's important for folks to have. And to see the joyful parts. So our opening dinner and book discussion, we had live dancers, we had performers come. So to know that our history is not just our pain, but is also joyful, and to return home is also to return to that. So I think those were the elements that were really important for me to bring out.
Cool, girl. You put a lot in there, so I want to unpack that a bit. First, I want to let everyone know the bottom of your screen. You'll see some pictures and photos from Jaleesa's last trip to Ghana, and the women that traveled with her, as well as pictures from some of the other excursions and experiences. You mentioned the homegoing experience and the experience for Elmina Castle. Actually, in part two, if you guys stick around, we'll go through a little bit of Jaleesa's blog on booktrips.com to look at some of these experiences more closely, as well as I'll be sharing some of my pictures. I found them from my trip to Ghana. And I remember that experience at Elmina Castle, which is actually, let's just call it what it is, it's slave dungeons. And was very transformative. It actually put a cloud of darkness over me for almost for the remainder of the trip. Not in a way that like it made me sort of see things differently. Right? We had an experience in a club in Ghana where we didn't know where we had ended up, and then I look around and I noticed that we are in a club for sex trafficking. Like there are nothing but rich Caucasian and Arab men with wedding bands on, and young white, young black women with names like Cleopatra, right? And but then I have experiences where I'm like in a neighborhood, and I'm like just standing on a block, about to get up, get some street food from a street vendor, like. They have like the hibachi type grills like on the side of the road and everything. I'm about to get it's basically meat on a stick. And I'm looking around and I feel home. You know what I mean? I'm like, and it's black everywhere. It's everybody's black. The commercials are black. The billboards are black. Everybody's black. I love it. The aunties chasing their badass kids around in the backyard are black. It was a glorious experience, and I think you brought it home when you talk about the generational traumas, but also the generational joys. And I want anyone who can, you got your phones out right now. I'm sure Google the Dahomey Kingdom of West Africa, and get a little bit of what we were before colonialization and the slave trade. I'll be having some books in part two to put on your to be read piles about that. So that brings me back to one of the questions that I prompted you with, Jalisa, I would not be surprised if it was on this trip. A lot of your experiences are very transformative, not just Ghana. You really center your trips not only around great experiences for your travelers, but also great experiences for the partners and merchants and folks that you have your boots on the ground waiting to welcome those travelers. Can you tell me about any moments that were either very, personal, transformative, or really impactful
Mm.
and stayed with you after the journey?
Oh yeah. While we're on the topic of Ghana, I think the personally transformative was almost everyone on that trip, this was their first trip to the continent. So it was already this powerful experience of people trusting book trips to have that. And this was the way they wanted to do that. They wanted to be in community with other people who loved books, who were curious, and who wanted to work with local communities. So I think that was already a powerful entry point because these people intentionally picked this way to do the trip. I think watching people come from the slave dungeons and how heavy that experience was to we followed that up with a meditation experience where folks were able to move the energy physically through their bodies, and then we had sound healing to kind of ground you back because that's a heavy energy
I
to
needed that.
carry. So
I
being
needed that.
very in yeah, so
Yeah, I
being
needed
very
that then.
intentional about like how are we processing
Yes.
what we're doing, and then for that to be followed by the naming ceremony where it came from.
Yes.
This was the door of no return. We processed that and then we returned. Like that journey
Mhm.
was very emotional for people to know that you weren't forgotten about. So when we had the naming ceremony, the first thing the village elders said is that your return is not a surprise to us. The ancestors already
I'm trying not to
asked
get
us to
emotional because
prepare
I'm just remembering my own
to
experience.
welcome you.
Yeah.
Yes. And so
Hmm.
for this to be a preordained thing and it to feel like a fulfillment
Hmm.
of a wish, I think that was super, super powerful
Yes.
for me. So I will say that that has been a transformative experience, not only for the travelers, but for me as a facilitator of
Yeah.
that experience. I don't take that lightly.
So I want everyone check out booktrips.com because Jaleesa has a blog there. She talks about some more about this experience and other experiences that the ladies had in Ghana. And you can also read more about past travel experiences on booktrips.com. So make sure you guys check that out and sign up for Jaleesa's newsletter while you are there. So that's where we just came from Ghana. Where are you going next?
Yes. So for next year, first up, we are going to Panama City, Panama. We're reading The Great Divide by Christina Henriquez.
Beginning.
And
I
so
haven't.
this is a book. It's so good. It's so
Mhm.
good. So this is a book that's about the building of the Panama Canal, first by the French, but this focuses on the American time in the Panama Canal, but through the stories of the Afro Caribbean women and laborers who were brought over to help build that canal. So I love that the story centers who are the communities that were impacted by the canal. I think people talk about it as this ingenuity, this like engineering ingenuity, which it is, but it also impacted indigenous communities who were displaced because of the creation of the canal. It really changed the fabric of Panama, where it became this melting pot of different cultures, folks who were indigenous to the area, also the Caribbean communities that were brought to the area. So I think this book does a really great job of talking about that. And so we have a really exciting experience there. We're partnering with Trip to Jenny, which is an Afro Panamanian women owned company that we're working with. Um, Christina Henriquez and her father are going to have a private conversation with our travelers before the trip to talk about the inspiration for writing the book. So this is a really exciting trip that we have in store. And then after that, that's in March of 2025. And then in April, we are going back to South Africa. We are doing Johannesburg and Cape Town, and we are reading Trevor Noah's Born a Crime, which does a really, really great job of talking about what it means to grow up colored or mixed, as we would say, in apartheid South Africa with humor, but also with great historical context for that. So, really excited about that experience. South Africa is always a country I love to visit. Last year, we went to Cape Town and we read Intruders by Mohali Mashigo, who is a local
Woohoo.
author who does speculative fiction, short stories. She also writes for Marvel. So if you're into comic books, she's your person too. And so that was a really great experience last year. Well, earlier this year, actually, because she came on site to do a book discussion with our travelers. So that was a really great experience. So excited to go back for that.
I was just going to say, I know probably some of our viewers are wondering if any of these trips, if any of the authors actually got to attend, or if you got to meet any of them. So I know that was probably really, really exciting for the group.
It was so good. And especially because a part of book trips is being a love letter to authors and writers in the written word. And so to be able to give her flowers in person and to be able to have that conversation, it goes so much deeper than what you read as far as what the stories are speculative fiction, but they also tell you the history of South Africa, whether it is medical experimentation on Black communities, whether it's what it looks like to deal with mental illness, marginalization, sexual assault, like all these heavy topics.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It tells them in a way that's intriguing and makes you want to learn more about them. So to really get the grounding in how her own experiences, the experiences of her family informed the book was just a wonderful conversation. And we do have a recording of some of that conversation on our blog that I can share as well.
Oh, wait. So, yeah, you guys have to, again, check out the blog, booktrips.com. And what was that author again that from South Africa, the one that you
Her
just
name
mentioned, Jalisa?
is, sorry, Mahali Mashigo, and the book is Intruders. It's a short story collection.
Oh, that's right up my alley. And speculative fiction. So I'm just putting these
Yes.
in the chat. And everyone, you can check out when I post these things online and highlights online tomorrow. You'll get all the to be read reads and recs from tonight's show on booksandbounty.com. So if we don't catch them in the chat or if you missed them today, don't worry about it. Check out booksandbounty.com tomorrow, and we'll make sure you have that list up and ready for you. So, Jalissa, right, before we go, I want, if viewers have questions about how, they want to reach out about book trips or about the conversation we had today, how can the viewers follow you or reach out to you?
Definitely. So our website is www.booked trips.com. We're at Book Trips on Instagram. I'm Jalisa, Jalisa at booktrips.com if you want to reach me directly. We have a free monthly newsletter where we share book recommendations, first access to our trip. So definitely get on that. And we're going to be announcing in our next newsletter where we're going for 2025. So, in addition to Panama and South Africa, we have October, we're going to Ghana again. We're going to be in Morocco in November, and we might be going back to Bogota, Colombia. So, we have some really exciting things coming up.
I've actually always wanted to go to Colombia. You were asking if about recommendations for Moroccan inspired book. Have you found one yet?
I have a few recommendations, but still open to other recommendations. So we're doing something a little different with Morocco where I'm taking folks along to the research trip with me, and you all get to help me co design the experience from beginning to end. So there's a lot of opportunity for input.
Okay, that's saying that I might have to talk about that. Sounds like fun. So as with all of our special guests here at Books and Bounty, when we leave, I ask you to give our viewers your recommendations for bookish things, people, and events. This could be things upcoming for book trips, any other book recommendations, or a bookish product that you found and wanted to share with the viewers. But what's your bookish thing, person, and event that you would like to leave us with tonight, Jaleesa?
Oh my goodness. I didn't prepare for this the way I should, but I do want to highlight Story Candles and Goods, who we partner with for our we have a room spray that we put in all our book boxes. So love that. They use scent to tell stories, which I think is really, really amazing. Um, recommendations. I just finished Ghana Must Go by Taye Selassie. If you're looking for Ghana recommendations, it is
Mhm,
so good. Highly
mhm.
recommend. I also finished Geisha a Life because I just finished a trip in Japan. So I would recommend that as a book. Um,
What was that one?
uh, Geisha a Life.
Life. Okay.
So that is set in Kyoto, Japan, and it's told from the story of a geisha. So memoirs of a geisha kind of sensationalized what it
Okay.
means to be a geisha. So this is her personal experience, kind of dispelling some myths that are out in the public about that. So it's really, really great book to get a grounding in Kyoto and really understanding of the ancient artistry that geisha are a part of. So I would highly recommend that as well. Africa
Mhm.
is Not a Country is a really great book for nonfiction November, which we're currently in. So I would recommend that as well. As far as events, I know there's Ake Book Festival in Nigeria. That's like right around the corner.
I found
Um,
the website. Uh-huh.
Next May, there is Calabash Book Festival in Treasure Beach, Jamaica. I've gone twice. It is so, so amazing. It's free to attend. It's usually on Memorial Day weekend every year. They send out the lineup really last minute, but I highly recommend
That
that one as
sounds
well.
like a good time. I'm
That's a
trying to
good
find
one.
the website for these. Yes, Calabash International. I'm putting that in the chat. Who wants to go on a bookish vacation to Jamaica?
Yes. Oh, and then I stayed at a book themed hotel in Hakone, Japan called Hakone Hambako. It was so good. Breakfast and dinner are included. Dinner is like this 9 course very delicious high class experience. It's floor to ceiling books in both in the main lobby as well as your room. And they have hot springs in each of the rooms, like onsen baths that you can experience. So highly recommend if folks want a weekend outside of Tokyo, somewhere that most people don't visit. That is a great bookish vacation.
Well, Jaleesa, thank you so much. This is really really a fun conversation. I hope some of our bookish entrepreneurs out there watching tonight got some really really good tips about growth and scale, as well as preparing. Not if you just think about what Jaleesa was talking about earlier about the sort of dedication um, and seriousness she puts into not only planning her trip but thinking about the overall experience for her customers, right? Preparing the travel guides ahead of time, making sure that she travels to the destinations first, have that hands-on research, really understand the experience, especially as a Black woman, understanding our safety and what we're looking for when we travel. So, uh, check out tomorrow, you guys. I'll be putting up highlights. Remember, again, the only way you can watch the full show with all the bloopers, all the fun tips, and all of the tidbits on live on Twitch. Tonight, we're doing something different for our TikTok followers because, Jaleesa, I just reached 300 TikTok followers. Woo!
So
Yeah,
exciting.
so excited. Thank
Congratulations.
you. So we are live streaming on usually we only live stream to Twitch, but tonight we are live streaming to TikTok and Twitch for as a thank you to our TikTok followers. Make sure you guys go
Love it.
follow Book Trips on Instagram. Check out the blog on booktrips.com. We'll be previewing a little bit of that in part two of the show. Jaleesa, thank you so much for joining us
Thank you.
tonight.
Thank
And
you.
girl, we'll have to get up soon. I know we're both busy women, but it would be lovely to have some coffee or tea with you soon. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right,
Thank you
every.
so much.
Thank you.
It was a joy to talk to you. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you. See you later.
Bye.
All right, everyone. So stick around for part two, where we'll be taking a look at Infinitum by Tim Fielder. I will be giving you a live book review. It will be my first graphic novels book review. We'll also be going through a few book hauls from the past week at a little bit of, at some of the local vendors, a couple of book fairs in the Baltimore area, as well as getting into. I will start reading tonight live with you to give some first impressions of Occultist by Laura Perez. So stick around for part two. Also have some exciting news. Last week's episode, we had author Tessa Stone in the Books and Bounty virtual She Suite, where we talked what it meant to be an up and coming star in the romance community. Tara has a series of dark paranormal romance novellas out in the Winter Moon series. They are rapidly doing numbers on Amazon. I mean, the girl's upwards of millions and millions and millions of pages read. Book Talk is really, really loving these stories. So not my first, but this is Tessa's debut novel. I've given my honest and candid review. You know, we are on a 5 leaf rating system. I gave this one 4 leaves. This is a debut novel. They, as avid readers, as a publisher and editor myself, there were expected uh, smaller mistakes or even typos that you sometimes get with self-publishing authors, but the story itself is so good. It's such a take along easy read, and the one major piece of constructive criticism that I gave Tessa when we were talking last week, she actually she answered the question first. I asked her what have you learned, what would you change as you continue to write her series. Her series issues, she said she would want more character development. She wants to be able to give the story more breathing room. I could tell Jalisa, I think, started writing this earlier this year. It came out not too long after that, and you can tell there's a fast moving pace, almost to the point where you feel like you're rushed, right? You want to stop, you want to sit down and get to know the characters. Now the sexy scenes, the intimate scenes, honey, they slow down. You understand? Slow down. They give you pause. They gave me pause. I'm a grown woman. They gave me pause. Y'all go pick up Tessa Stone's Taming Kane. Okay? So I'm gonna go refill my tea, make sure everything is up and ready for part 2. I'll see you guys back here in just a moment.